Hey, welcome back to MetFlex and Chill. This is Rachel Gregory, your host, and today we have a solo Q&A episode. So I'm excited about this one. We got a few different types of questions, some related to energy drinks, some related to DOMS or delayed onset muscle soreness and training. We have another one about calorie deficits and how to stay in a calorie deficit. So a few different topics to get into today. So we'll jump right in. Before we do that, I do want to just give a little bit of a shout out to my personal newsletter, the Friday Flex. If you are not a subscriber to the Friday Flex, that is my weekly newsletter that goes out on Fridays, obviously. And it contains a bunch of different, just kind of like beneficial information that can hopefully help you in your health and fitness journey. So I share recipes, I share workouts, workout videos, common Q&As that I get, like common questions that I get. Obviously the podcast of the week goes out in that as well, products that I'm personally using and loving. So a bunch of that type of thing. So purely informational tips and things that I find useful and that I want to share with all of you. So hopefully you are a subscriber. If not, you can go to metflexlife.com/newsletter. I will link that in the show notes and you can sign up. And it's just every Friday, you'll get an email from me. I try to send them out around 10 o'clock PST. So whatever time zone you're in, it should come around that time. And yeah, other than that, let's get into today's Q&A. All right, first question today. I'm curious how you feel about 5-hour energy drinks or any energy drinks. I've gotten in the habit of consuming them on a daily basis. Probably not the best. What do you recommend as a replacement? Okay, so 5-hour energies, I would say, are probably not the highest quality energy drink. There are tons of different kinds of energy drinks out there. Some of them actually are pretty good in terms of they're not jam-packed with like a ton of caffeine. They also have like other efficacious ingredients that are for like nootropic benefits and things like that. So I would say like not all energy drinks are bad per se. But when it comes to 5-hour energies, probably not for that brand, 5-hour energy, probably not the brand that I would recommend typically, because the ones that I've seen are just like ton of caffeine and nothing else. But everybody obviously responds to caffeine differently. You can, develop a tolerance to caffeine if you, if you're having a ton, every single day, and then you build that tolerance and then you need more to get the same effects. So, as much as I hate to say this, cycling on and off of caffeine is probably a great idea. But with that being said, everybody's different, right? So you have to kind of be honest with yourself when it comes to your caffeine intake and how it's affecting you, right? Because you can absolutely develop a vicious cycle that, you're consuming a ton of caffeine and that is causing you to have issues falling asleep at night. And then when you have issues falling asleep at night, obviously you're not getting good rest. So you wake up the next day and then you go for more caffeine and then it just starts all over again. It's like this repeating cycle. I don't get enough sleep, so I don't have energy during the day. So I'm going to go for more caffeine. And then that, more caffeine turns into, trouble falling asleep again. And it's just this vicious cycle that a lot of people are dealing with. I know that I've gone through that myself. And sometimes I have to check myself with that too. If I'm getting into if I have a lot of work going on or maybe I am struggling with a little bit of sleep if I'm traveling or, going between time zones, things like that. So you really just kind of have to be honest with yourself, like I said, and just kind of check yourself with where you're at. Sometimes, like I said, I go overboard. I need to pull back. And the biggest sign for me when it comes to needing to pull back on caffeine is when my sleep starts to get disrupted. So that's the number one sign where I'm like, all right, if I can't wind down at night, if I can't get a good night of sleep, if I'm having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, the first thing I do is, check my caffeine intake, mostly making sure that I'm not having it too late in the day. I typically try to cut it off at max noon, because we do know that caffeine has a half-life of 6 hours. So if you consume a certain amount of caffeine, that caffeine is going to be, half of that caffeine is going to be in your system 6 hours later, right? So it has a half-life, meaning you consume, let's say 200 milligrams of caffeine, 6 hours later, you're still going to have about 100 milligrams of caffeine circulating in your system. And so if you're having caffeine at, an afternoon, coffee or espresso at 4 or 5 o'clock, and then you try to go to sleep at like 10 o'clock, you're still going to have that in your system. But again, everybody responds differently. I know, my dad and some other people in my family and some of my friends can have an espresso or a cappuccino like after dinner at 9 o'clock at night, and it has no effect on them. I cannot do that. I would literally be up all night. So it's very individualized. I would say I do have, and I think I've spoken about this before, I have a sleep checklist on my website. It's a free download, and it basically takes you through, like, if you're having issues falling asleep. Obviously, this is not just related to caffeine, but this can help kind of weed out a few things. Caffeine is obviously part of that, but you can go to metflexlife.com/sleep-checklist to download that. If you're interested, if you do have issues falling asleep, because again, that's going to dictate how your energy levels are the next day. So if you're not getting good sleep, you're going to be, picking up that caffeine or that coffee hit, throughout the day as that energy level is lower. So sleep is really where it starts with that, in my opinion. And then recommendations for replacements or alternatives. So I would say the first recommendation I would make is if you're using caffeine as something like to boost cognitive performance, which it absolutely does, although you can get, you can build that tolerance to it, so it doesn't really have an effect anymore, and then you have to have more. So if you're looking for like a focus, like a boost in cognitive support, throughout the day when you're working, I've been using something called MasterBrain from First Form. It's a supplement that they actually have an AM version and a PM version. So the AM version has a blend of different nootropics in it, and it does have a little bit of a caffeine as well. But it has some different nootropics and some different herbal ingredients that can help with focus and cognitive support. So that's the one that I use in the AM. And then there is a PM as well that helps with just kind of winding down. So they have a sleep blend. There's some things like GABA, ashwagandha, valerian root, a little bit of melatonin just to kind of help with winding down. So that's a product that I've been using lately, and it has actually been awesome. I will link it in the show notes. If you hit the link in the show notes, it's called MasterBrain. That link will get you free priority shipping. I do have an affiliate with this, with First Form. They're a brand that I'm really, really excited to work with, actually. So there's probably going to be some new things that I start recommending with them. But they are one of the top quality supplement companies out there. They have like the highest quality, like third-party testing when it comes to that. And I'm all about quality, especially when it comes to supplements. There's a lot of crap out there. So if you're interested in that, hit the link in the show notes, or you can send me an email if you have any questions about anything related to any of their supplements or anything like that. If you go to that link, I don't have a code, but if you go to that link, if you hit that link, that will give you free priority shipping. So that's one. And then if you're looking for like a pre-workout boost, I've been also using, and I don't use this every day, this is just when I need a little bit more of a boost. Typically, if I won't use it the same day that I use MasterBrain, just because it like is a little bit too much caffeine stacked on top of each other. But the pre-workout called MegaWatt, I will link that in the show notes. It is literally the best tasting pre-workout I've ever had. I've been using the pink lemonade flavor. It's really good. And it's not like a lot of pre-workouts are, again, just like caffeine bombs, and they just have like over 300 milligrams of caffeine in just like one single scoop. And that's just way too much for me. So MegaWatt, their caffeine, I believe it's 150 milligrams per scoop. So you can kind of adjust that serving. If you do want a little bit more, you can have, a scoop and a half or 2 scoops, or a little bit less. And it's just not excessive. So that's what I like about that pre-workout MegaWatt. And it also contains, it's not just caffeine, like it also contains other nootropic ingredients as well. So it's not just like a huge caffeine hit, but it also has some focus ingredients. Alpha GPC is one of the ones that I love. It has a blend of some other, I don't have it pulled up right now to look at, but some other ingredients that are not in, like MasterBrain and MegaWatt are a little bit different. They have different ingredients within them. So you could use them together if you wanted to, but just be careful of the caffeine content. But MegaWatt is something that I've been utilizing, and I really like it as kind of that pre-workout boost. And again, you don't need this. You don't need a pre-workout to get a good workout. I always, try to preach that if you're not getting good sleep, if you're not paying attention to nutrition, if you're not, if you're not following a good training program in general and recovering, like nothing's gonna help. Yeah, maybe you'll get like a short-term benefit from taking a pre-workout with that, but it's going to catch up to you eventually. So you definitely don't want to be, overdoing it with the caffeine and the pre-workouts and things like that, trying to make up for, lack of sleep and lack of, quality nutrition, right? So hopefully that helps a little bit. Again, I'll link those in the show notes. So it's MasterBrain, and they have an AM and a PM version. So if you are struggling with focus during the day and you're also struggling to fall asleep at night, it's a great product to test out and use for yourself. I would say, you have to give it a little while. It's not like something that you immediately will find, like the first day you take it. You probably will find a little bit of a difference the first day, at least I did. But it is one of those things that taking consistently day to day that's when you're really going to notice it. And for most supplements, that's typically what I recommend. I mean, other than pre-workout, you can definitely notice that just by taking it one day. But all in all, with caffeine, you just want to be careful. You want to be, just be real with yourself, right? Like just kind of check yourself when it comes to that, like how much caffeine are you having during the day? If you're always, having that afternoon crash and you're going for caffeine, there's probably something else going on there. So utilizing like a nootropic supplement for focus that doesn't have a ton of caffeine in it can be a good alternative to help wean you off of that caffeine, or just like kind of like lowering the dose, or taking a break, right? Like cycling off of caffeine for a week or two, and then bringing it back in. It's crazy. It's crazy how much, like when you do that, it's crazy how much effect you can get from such a lower dose after kind of cycling off of it. So anyway, if you have any questions at all about anything that I just mentioned, feel free to always reach out via email, or on my website at the contact tab. All right, next question. DOMS is making me unable to hit my every other day at the gym goal. I'm tracking my progressive overload, so I don't think I'm lifting too heavy, and I'm sticking to about 3 sets. Is this a newbie thing? Okay, so like I mentioned in the intro, DOMS just stands for delayed onset muscle soreness. It's just a fancy term for, feeling sore. So if you're new to consistently lifting, or if you're like coming back from a period of time off, you're definitely going to experience some soreness, especially the first few weeks, especially if you are a complete newbie. So it's really just your body adapting to the new stimulus. So it's going to take time. I would say like for a complete newbie, like give it 2 to 3 weeks, right? And your body will start to adapt to, what you're doing. It'll start to adapt to the stimulus, and the soreness will dissipate. Soreness is one of those things where you probably want to feel like a little soreness after your training sessions or the next day, just like a little bit of, what's the word that I'm looking for? Like you should feel like your muscles have done something. It's not going to happen every day, especially as you are, as you're getting more advanced. And even the more advanced you get, you might not even have a ton of soreness. But if you're never, ever sore, it might be a sign that maybe you need to push a little bit harder. But with that being said, soreness is not an indication that you had a good workout, right? It's just one of those things that, if you are excessively sore all the time, that's probably telling, and this is a little bit of a side from, the beginning, right? Like I said, in the beginning, you will be sore as your body adapts to that stimulus. But if you're excessively sore day in and day out for like weeks and months on end, after you kind of, after you pass that newbie period, that's probably an indication that you might be doing too much. But if you're never, ever, ever sore, then it might be the opposite. So you have to kind of find that middle ground. For me, there's some weeks where I don't have really any soreness. When I start a new training phase or something like that, and I'm doing a new workout or new exercise that I haven't done in a while, I will definitely have some soreness just because it's, again, that stimulus that your body needs to adapt to. So I would say just give it time, especially if you're a newbie. Another thing is you said every other day that your goal is to hit a training session every other day. So I would say 3 or 4 days is definitely going to be more than enough, especially if you're new to lifting, especially if you're just like you haven't followed a structured progressive program in the past and you're just getting into that. You can absolutely make amazing progress just training 3 times a week, maybe 4 times a week. And that is one of the things that I've seen myself and a lot of clients make the mistake is they want to do more and more and more and thinking, training 5 or 6 days a week is necessary to get results. Sometimes that can, and a lot of the time that can backfire on you. So most of us do not need to be lifting 5 or more days a week. You can absolutely make great gains and get great results from just lifting 4 or 5 days. And also, you want to just kind of be realistic with your lifestyle too, and like what you could commit to, because maybe you can commit to 4 or 5 days right now and that lasts for like 2 weeks. But what if, you committed to 3 times per week for a good period of time, and you can actually go into those sessions feeling super recovered, feeling, really motivated to train because you know that you're only, you have 3 days this week to train and you're going to make those the best training sessions you can versus giving it like, being half-assed for 5 days a week, right? So that's something to think about too, because that matters. The intensity in your sessions matter. And so if you're only giving it like 50% for 5 days versus giving it, 90 to 100% for 3 days, that makes a big difference. And then also, I can go way down the rabbit hole with this, but you have to recover, right? If you are training 5 to 6 days a week, people can definitely do that. You can definitely recover from that, but that is going to be like the advanced of the advanced that need to do that. Most of us only need to be training or lifting, I would say 3 to 4 days per week. Personally, I stick to 4 days a week. Sometimes I'll go to 3 days a week. Sometimes, like if I'm in a building phase, I will go to 5 days a week, but that's only for a short period of time. So I train mostly, I'm at 4 days per week in terms of lifting. And then with my clients, they're generally between 3 and 4 days as well. And again, if you're super busy, if you have lots going on with your family and at work, you're going to get the best results by training 3 or 4 days a week because you can give that intensity to each of those training sessions when you have less per week to commit to. And so from a mental perspective and from a physical perspective, you're going to be way better off with those three days or 4 days in the long run, for sure. Trust me, I've been there. I've had many clients who have been there, and I haven't not had a client who's seen better results from pulling it back a little bit and focusing on doing less and actually getting more out of it. Obviously you have to work hard. You have to have, adequate intensity in those sessions. You have to make sure that you're following, like I said, a structured, smart program where you're hitting all of the muscle groups per week, different movement patterns. It's laid out in a way that makes sense. And you're not just kind of doing random workouts at random times or following like random Instagram workouts, because that is just going to be a recipe for not getting results in any efficient way. So hopefully that helps a little bit, but yeah, it's definitely normal to feel excessive soreness when you're first starting off a program, or if you're coming back from a time off. Your body just needs a little bit of time to adapt to that. And I do have programs on my website that are 3 and 4 days per week. So Level Up and Elevate are 3-month workout programs. I'll link them in the show notes, or you can go to my website, metflexlife.com/programs. And I have built out 3-month programs with Level Up. That is going to be 3 days per week, and Elevate is going to be 4 days per week. So if you're interested in that, definitely check that out on my website. All right, last question today. How do you count calories and stay in a deficit? Okay, so the simplest answer to this question is to just start tracking your intake, right? Use a tracking app. Just start tracking everything you're consuming, food, drinks, anything that has calories. Start tracking so you can see where you're at. And then you can implement a deficit from there. And for me, I used MyFitnessPal for years. I used some other apps as well. But I've been using the First Form app recently, within the last few months, and I really like it. It's very user-friendly. There's lots of other features besides just nutrition. You can track habits. You can track your progress in there as well in terms of like body tape measurements and pictures and things like that. So it's a cool app. I'll link it in the show notes if you want to check that out. But really just finding an app that you can use, finding one that is like MyFitnessPal, for example, is a great option. However, like the premium version is probably the version that I would recommend, because then you can actually track, start to see your macros and things like that. But the First Form app is actually cheaper than the premium version of MyFitnessPal. So if you're looking for a new app or looking for an app to use, I definitely start by recommending the First Form app for sure. Again, that link is in the show notes. But you just want to start and you just want to get consistent, right? Just start, commit to tracking for at least 2 weeks to see where you're at, right? I would say, the biggest thing with tracking is just that awareness, right? Realizing how much you're eating, what you're eating, right? How much protein you're consuming is going to be a huge thing. That is just making that like a simple adjustment to your protein intake can just make such a difference. And I've seen this with a lot of my clients. Most clients that I have, or most people that I start working with, are under eating protein severely. And once we bump that protein up, things change, even without, touching calories sometimes. So definitely just awareness. And, that's the biggest thing with tracking. It's like, it's the awareness and the education that you get from tracking your food and track and seeing what those portion sizes are and what your food contains, the macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbs, things like that. Like, it's education that you're going to build so that you have that moving forward, not that you have to track forever. But once you put in a little bit of work ahead of time, like you put in a few months of tracking and getting familiar with, just not only how much you're consuming, but the types of foods that you're consuming and the, what they contain and all of that, that is going to be like priceless information for the future and for you to be able to not only get results, but maintain those in the long run, right? So I'm a huge fan of tracking just because it builds a ton of awareness and it gives you structure, right? So there are definitely different ways or different levels of tracking. And I actually recorded a whole podcast on all of the different levels of tracking. So if you want to check that out, I will link it in the show notes. It's episode 120 and it's called Can I Lose Weight Without Tracking Macros? So I kind of go through exactly, where I would start and what you can actually not get away with, but in terms of a lot of people kind of get overwhelmed when they start to track and they think they have to track every single macronutrient. They have to be exact with their intake, but you don't. It's really just starting and just getting consistent with it and finding a method that works for you. So whether that's tracking just calories and protein and paying attention mostly to that, whether it's tracking all macronutrients, whether it's paying attention to portion sizes, there's so many different ways to go about it. So it's really just figuring out what is going to work for you and what you can stay consistent with. So that episode is really going to help you get started and understand why tracking is important and how to get the most out of it. So I would definitely check that out if you haven't already. And yeah, that would be my recommendation. Check out that episode about tracking and just start and start to get consistent, and you will build the awareness and the education to continue moving forward. All right, that's all we got today. I hope that episode was useful. I hope I answered your questions. If you have, I know I mentioned a bunch of different links throughout the episode, so definitely check out the show notes. They are, if you're listening to this on iTunes, you can swipe up to check out the show notes. If you're on Spotify, you can press the little read more button underneath the episode, and the show notes will be there, and the links there'll be hyperlinks, throughout the timestamps. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. And like I mentioned in the intro, if you're not signed up for the Friday Flex yet, you can go to metflexlife.com/newsletter, sign up for that. It's my weekly newsletter with tons of hopefully beneficial information that comes out every single week. Recipes, tips, products that I'm liking, or anything that, is that I would find beneficial, anything that I find beneficial that I want to share with you. That's really what that newsletter is all about. So, let me know if there's anything else I can do to help in regards to questions that I can answer. Always feel free to reach out to me. I have a contact button on my website if you have any questions. I'll see you next time.